You're planning a trip. You have picked the destination, started looking at flights, and then you find a line in the booking notes you did not expect. An entry fee. Not a visa. Not a hotel tax. An entry fee just to walk into the place. This is happening at more destinations than most travelers realize, and it is accelerating. Here is what it actually is, where it is appearing, and whether it changes anything about how you should plan. One destination that made the shift visible is Venice. For years, the city debated how to handle the pressure of millions of day visitors arriving, spending a few hours, and leaving without contributing meaningfully to local infrastructure. The answer it landed on was a day-tripper access fee applied during peak periods. Travel advisories have noted that the fee is not enormous in absolute terms, but the principle behind it is significant. Venice is essentially telling short-stay visitors that access to its historic center during the busiest windows now has a price attached. Residents are exempt. Overnight hotel guests are largely exempt. The fee targets the specific behavior the city identified as most damaging: arrive, photograph, leave. That targeting logic is worth paying attention to because it appears in almost every version of this policy. Bali introduced a tourist levy that applies to international arrivals. Reports from travel communities and tourism boards suggest the funds are directed toward environmental and cultural preservation. The island has faced real pressure from a volume of visitors that outpaced its infrastructure for years. The levy is modest relative to the overall cost of a trip, but it represents a formal acknowledgement that the destination has a carrying cost that was previously invisible in the price of a ticket. Amsterdam took a different approach to the same problem. Rather than a flat entry fee, it has moved to restrict large cruise ships from docking in the city center. The reasoning is specific. Cruise passengers generate foot traffic in the most congested areas while contributing less to local businesses than overnight visitors do. The restriction is not a fee in the traditional sense, but it functions as one. If your itinerary included Amsterdam as a cruise port stop, that option has become structurally harder to access. The fourth example sits at a different scale entirely. Palau, a small island nation in the Pacific, has required visitors to sign what it calls the Pristine Paradise Pledge as a condition of entry. Travelers agree to a set of environmental commitments before they are allowed in. This is not a monetary fee, but it is an access condition, and it signals the same underlying shift. The destination is asserting that entry is conditional, not automatic. So what is actually driving this pattern? Three forces appear to be converging. First, the post-pandemic rebound in travel was faster and more concentrated than most destinations planned for. Crowds returned to the same iconic locations at the same times, and the strain became visible and politically difficult to ignore. Second, local residents in heavily visited places have become more vocal about the costs they absorb from tourism: noise, congestion, rising rents, wear on public infrastructure. That political pressure has given local governments cover to act. Third, and perhaps most practically, these fees generate revenue at a moment when many destinations are looking for ways to fund conservation and infrastructure without raising taxes on residents. The question travelers are quietly asking is whether any of this actually works. The honest answer is that the evidence is still early. Venice's day tripper fee has been in place long enough to generate some data, and travel observers note that it has not dramatically reduced visitor numbers on peak days. What it appears to have done is shift some behavior at the margins and generate revenue. Whether that revenue is being used effectively is a separate question. Bali's levy is newer, and its long-term impact on visitor behavior is not yet clear. Amsterdam's cruise restrictions are more structural and harder to reverse, which may make them more effective over time. What this means practically for your next trip is straightforward. Before you finalize any booking to a destination that has been in the news for over-tourism, check the current entry requirements. Not just visas. Check whether there is a tourist levy, a day access fee, a seasonal restriction, or a registration requirement. These policies are being updated frequently, and they are not always prominently displayed on booking platforms. The destinations adding these requirements are not trying to stop tourism. They are trying to reshape it. The traveler who arrives informed, stays longer, and engages more deeply with the place is exactly who these policies are designed to keep. The traveler who is planning a tower photo stop during peak season is the one being priced or regulated out. Here is the question worth sitting with. If these fees are not actually reducing crowds at the most famous sites, what would actually work? That question is getting serious attention from urban planners and tourism economists right now, and the answers being proposed are more radical than an entry fee. That is the next thing worth understanding before you book.